Yeah, thank you, Volker, very much for the introduction. It's always fun to be back in Plamadiso and present my work. I still remember one of the first days, Plamadiso 2 years back that I did also another presentation. And I'm a big fan, so I go back and watch some of these videos. What I really enjoy is that you bring different people together, different works together, and I think this is the way to do good research. And this paper is out because many good friends came together to solve a real problem. So this is a collaboration with first friends and then colleagues from Spain, Cyprus, Netherlands, and Germany. What we try to do is to try to understand a little bit what's happening with our privacy on the web. Um, and many of you, when you go to a website, for example, when you search for a keyword, for example, Berlin, you start getting some advertisements, right? And these advertisements tend out to be very particular, very personalized to your interest. Uh, and this means that somebody is actually known things about you, knows things about your habits. Uh, if you see the technology behind that, it's a very old technology, which is called web cookies. And what happens is when you use your web browser to visit the website, for example, www.berlin.com, then you establish a connection with the server that hosts the website. And then in order to know the server, who are you, it puts a small part of data in your browser. So this is called web cookie, and this stays in your browser. So for your next visit, the server knows who you are. So somebody will say that this is a good practice. It's out there for years in order to accelerate a little bit your logins, improve your experience, etc. And maybe it's legit if you do it with the server of the web page that you visit. Now, today, the web pages have parts from many different websites. And typically, when you visit a news website, for example, CNN.com, you may end up having to contact hundreds or even thousands of servers, right? So in this case, this is not anymore the web server that you initially visit, but it's an other server that we call it a third-party server. So, for example, you may want to visit www.cnn.com, but you may get also a connection to a Google web server. So in this case, again, cookies are used, right? But you get a different cookie from a different entity, which is a third-party entity that you didn't know that you visit. And this cookie is actually used in your communication. Now, of course, this raised some concerns because you never was informed that you're going to visit another website and that your information may be used in another website. Even worse, it is possible that this information is actually used across different websites. So you may visit www.berlin.com, but this third-party server may use this data when you visit also www.munich.com or www.boston.com. And this is where the tracking happens. So with these cookies, this server or this entity behind the server can actually see your click streams and see where you're going and what are your habits. Now, maybe this is not a big problem for many people, but actually I would advocate that this is actually the problem in privacy. Because if you have a powerful entity like Google, Facebook, that sees what are you visiting, and what is your habits, and maybe also leak some of your personal information, for example, location, age, maybe salary, then it can create what I call a digital soul, right? It can create a profile that knows who you are, what are you doing, what are your preferences. And this may be used for advertisement, but also can be used for things that are not that welcome. For example, it can bias the way that you choose what you like or what not, how you buy things, right? So it may create new needs for you, or maybe bias to buy one product versus another. And unfortunately, we have cases that even this can be used in order to bias how you vote, right? Now, if you don't believe me that this is a big concern, I highly recommend you to see this amazing video by John Oliver in HBO that explains how a whole ecosystem of billions of dollars have been built in order to acquire this information from cookies and from other sources and create what's called data brokers. So there are exchanges that with some price, they can give information about you, your habits, etc. Of course, this is not new. It's out there for some time. This industry actually fuels the development of the internet. There are the Googles and Facebooks of the world. And there has been some skepticism from the citizens and also for governments. The gold standard is the European Union General Data Protection Regulation, or simply GDPR, that it was introduced in May 2018 to deal with these matters. So now every time users are browsing the web, have some level of protections. And this actually was the beginning of a wave of regulation and regulatory interventions in other parts of the world. I just want to mention the California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA, in California, the PIPEDA in Canada. You can find also more in our paper, in Israel, Australia, you name it. Now, if we focus specifically on what GDPR and other regulations mention about cookies, it's very clear that a cookie, this small part of data to track you, should not be installed in your browser without first the knowledge of the user, and second, the explicit consent. So the websites that actually put cookies on your browser should inform you, with a banner maybe, and also you should give your explicit consent by clicking or do some action for any cookie that's added, especially for cookie that is not absolutely related to the operation of the web page. Right? Now, if companies do not do that, there are a lot of fines. So the yield is about, if I remember correctly, 4% of the annual GDP, annual revenue, of the company, or it can be up to 10 or 20 million euros. This actually protects also European Union citizens, even if their connections are outside EU. So for example, if a user is located in Germany and visits a website that is in California, then the same regulation should be in place. And because of this, many companies actually decided not to sell any more products in Europe or not make available the content in Europe. Now, since 2018 has been some work that actually tries to assess to what extent this new regulation has an effect on the privacy of the users. So here I give you just two examples. There are many more in the literature. And if I want to summarize a little bit what all this study says, is that yes, GDPR changed things in the internet. Yes, it's a step forward to protect the privacy of the web users, but still there are problems. So still companies violate this. It is also possible to have a banner, click that I don't want this website to install cookies on my website, on my web browser, and this still happens. So we play a little bit the game between cat and mouse to see what's happening out there. So it's not new that, yes, there are problems with cookies. Now, what we do in our paper and in our work with my colleagues is, instead of trying to see what's happening, in the whole web, right? We focus on a specific part of the web that we think it's very critical, especially in this wave of digitalization that all the governments around the world try to do. So eGov is a very big thing in US, in Europe, in other developing parts, because it helps users to have more access and more instant access to the government, right? But unfortunately, if problems with cookies occur there, then we have a big problem. First, because all these websites are very popular. The governmental websites are typically popular websites, right? So if they offer a popular service, it is possible that up to tens or hundreds of millions in some countries will visit this website. So if there is no attention there, this website can turn from a service website to a surveillance website, right, where millions of users are monitored in a single location. The second thing is that because of COVID and the increased adoption of e-governance, there are some services that are only offered by electronic means. So many of you in the US and in Europe, you can now do your tax declaration only using government websites. You may try to find, for example, information about a new law, or you may submit your application only using website of the government. This means that even if you are aware of the problem of cookies and privacy, in some cases you have no other way to interact with the government. And of course, this was very beneficial during COVID, but also can be very dangerous, right? And the third reason why we pursue this research is because we strongly believe that the government has to be accountant of what they are doing, especially when they vote for a new law. We expect that they should also be compliant with the law, right? So all the European countries voted for GDPR, right? But then we didn't check, do they actually are compliant with GDPR? Okay, they can put fines to other companies that violate GDPR, but how about their own websites? So what we did is we took different countries around the world. We chose for our study to focus on the G20 countries. G20 countries is European Union and other 19 countries of high GDP. And as you can see in this map, this world map, the G19 countries are the ones with the dark color. So you can see that they come from different parts of the world. They have also a completely different way that they are governed. Some of them are kingdoms, some of them are monarchies, some of them are Western democracies or Eastern democracies. So this is an opportunity to see different type of government and how this reflects the design and operation of their websites. So in total, we evaluated about 150,000 websites that comes from about 5,000 different domains that are maintained for government. Now, for the source of this data, we relied on what the governments themselves say that is official website. So we didn't try to crawl the internet to find these websites, but we went to the official websites and then collected the links that they provide as official websites. We also investigated international organizations that somehow it's an umbrella for different activities around the world. This is where European Union is, but also United Nations, World Health Organization fit to this category. And also we investigated, because it was very timely during our study, official websites that have to do with COVID. Right? So those are the official website of US government, German government, Italian government that give information about COVID. Now, when we have this corpus of websites, we create an instrumented client that goes and connects to each of these websites and collects information. I don't want to bother you with all the details of the design, so let's go together and see an example. So here on the left-hand side, you see the official website of European Union. Okay. As you can see, this is a good example of a design of a website that actually asks you if you accept cookies or not. So what our client does, it connects to this website. It does not give consent for anything, and then checks which cookies are installed in the browser. So as you can see here, the design asks for consent for the user to add cookies. However, without giving our consent, cookies have been already added just with our visit. And this is without giving the consent. Now, the good thing in this craziness is that these cookies are owned by European Union. This is what I mentioned at the beginning of our of my talk as first party cookies. So yes, there is some problem, but they are owned by the owner of the website. So you visit the European Union add some cookies without your consent. Now, this is one type of information that we keep, the owner of the cookie. The other information that we keep is the expiration date. So the longer the expiration date of a cookie, the longer is the period that can be monitored. Right? And as you can see here, the cookies, some of them are session, which means that when you stop your visit to the website, when you stop your browser, then the cookie disappears. There are others that can live for a year, 2022, end of 2022. There are others that live there for decades. Right? So the expiration date of the first one is 2051. So if these cookies are misused, I hope not by EU, of course, but by somebody else, they have, I don't know, close to 30 years to track me. Now, this was a good example. Let me show you a bad example. By the way, I don't consider this perfect design, but so let's go to the government of the Russian Federation. Of course, you may notice that the website is not even secure, right? This helps more for surveillance, but definitely they don't ask you any permission to give your consent, for example, for cookies, right? So whenever you visit this website, there is no information that there are cookies in this website. They don't ask you for your consent. What's more worrisome is that except the government.ru, which is the Russian government, there are also other cookies that are installed. And unfortunately, these cookies are installed by third parties. So in this case, you see that there are cookies from Yandex company. Yandex is the Russian equivalent of Google that actually adds cookies when you visit this website, again, without your consent. And actually, this is not just a third party, this is a tracker. So we have a list that we compiled from different sources to see who are the trackers, who actually are the companies that follow what you are doing as you visit different websites. And Yandex is at the top of our list. So at least three cookies in this case were added for the third party. Here you can see some information about you encrypted, right? So this might be about the time that you visit the website, the location. We don't know because it's encrypted. In some rare cases, you can find also this as a plain text. And of course, when you see for how long they can track you, this is anywhere between 1 and 9 years. Again, a lot of time, enough time to actually build your profile with these cookies. Okay, so now that I showed you a little bit what is the type of information collect for all these thousands of websites, let's see a little bit statistics. So how important is this problem? So should we exaggerate a little bit? So here we plot the percentage of websites that we visited per country in these G20 countries. In parentheses, the number of websites that we visited. And here you see the percentage of the websites that actually have at least one cookie that it was installed without your consent. If these websites were GDPR compliant, the number should be 0. Right? So I don't give my consent, I don't get any cookie. As you can see, if we just take all the cookies, right? So we don't discriminate between first party, third party, tracker cookie. The numbers are extremely high. So it's anywhere between 65% and 98%. Right? So I would say the vast majority of the websites we visit in governments around the world have cookies. And they add these cookies in our browser without our consent. So this is a problem already, right? So somebody could say, okay, stop here, go back, fix the problem, give your consent, otherwise no cookie should be there. But some of these cookies may be for a valid reason. Okay, so let's now focus on the third-party cookies, right? So you go to a governmental website, you ask for information about the government, and somehow you redirect it to a commercial third-party organization that adds cookies. So this is the percentage with the light yellow. So as you can see, it varies a lot. Unfortunately, in Russia, it's up to 90%. So 9 out of the 10 websites that you're going to visit, they have third-party cookies. And even in countries with strict privacy regulation, for example, Germany, this exceeds 10%. Yes, of course, there is a variance between 10% and 90%, but still, at 10 or 12%, it's quite high. If we focus a little bit more and we say, okay, let's find how many of these websites adds not only third-party cookies, which means commercial cookies from commercial organizations that has nothing to do with the government. Let's focus on those that we have very strong indication that are trackers. So we have seen them at multiple websites that they track your activity. Then this is the dark orange bar, and you can see that again, the numbers, of course, become a little bit lower, but they're still significant. So you go from 90% in Russia to 70%. In places like China and US, it's around 30 to 40%. And even in Germany, that it's probably one of the best cases in our study, it's around 5%. Right? So there is a problem there. Now let's check in how many cases the tracking is actually persistent and stays for at least a year. In the literature, persistent tracking occurs when the website adds cookies that last for at least 1 day. So studies have shown that 24 hours is enough to actually collect a lot of information about you, because when you're browsing the internet and the web, you visit hundreds of websites within a day, right? So a quickie of 1 day is enough. Here, we don't talk about cookies about 1 day, but 1 year, right? So surveillance is its best. And again, you see that in this case, the percentages, the ranking of the countries has changed a little bit, but the percentages are quite high again, right? So you have, for example, France having the tracking cookies for 50% of the web pages to last for more than a year, right? Saudi Arabia, it's around 20%. And then you can see that, the percentage is quite high. So this is a no-go for designing a governmental website, right? So this is the worst case because it allows for massive surveillance. Now let's focus a little bit now on the top players in this setting and maybe some regional characteristics. So here I show you who are the trackers that are most popular in US governmental websites. So those are some of the most common and most popular commercial trackers: DoubleClick, YouTube, and Google, that all of them are operated with Google. So YouTube is a company that was bought by Google a few years ago. And DoubleClick is also an advertisement tracker that was bought about 10 years ago by Google. And then you have Facebook, which is also a big player. And this twin is the tracker of Twitter. So if you add the first three, more than 25, more than a quarter of the web pages related to the US government are actually hosting trackers and add cookies. This is actually more or less what we see in all the Western countries. So if you go Germany, Italy, France, at the top, you see the three trackers of Google, Facebook, and a little bit lower, the Twitter. Unfortunately, this is the case also for international organizations. So you see again, YouTube, DoubleClick, Google. Of course, the ranking has changed a little bit. And unfortunately, the percentage of websites that have these trackers is even higher than US government. And equally worrisome is that even websites with health information related to COVID-19 that became extremely popular during the pandemic and lockdowns, and they are still popular, they still have more or less the same observations. Now, if we compare this with what happens with the rest of the web, we say that more or less we have a similar behavior. So we don't see, and I'll explain a little bit later, we don't see a big difference between governmental websites and any other website in terms of tracking. So unfortunately, it seems that the governments do not take care about the privacy of the visitors in these websites. Now, if we go to other parts of the world, for example, China, you see that things are a little bit different. So DoubleClick and Google are really at the bottom. They're not very popular. We know about the sanctions and the bad relationship between Western companies and the Chinese government. But there are other big players, for example, Baidu, which is like the Chinese Google, I would say. That's again very popular. And if you go to Russia, then as I saw in the slide before, you have different players. So you have Yandex in about 70% of the websites, and Sputnik, which is also very popular tracker. And DoubleClick is still there, but lower. Now, of course, somebody will ask why this happened. Is it like are these governments? Okay, I don't know. I cannot know what's happening in the Russian government right now, but at least in the Western governments, we have some hope that they respect or they try to respect the privacy of the user. So what's wrong there? So as I mentioned, there is no special care when you build these websites, right? So probably they assign the development of these websites to a third-party developer, and with manual investigation, we found out that one of the reasons why all these trackers are there is because designers of governmental websites add links to social networks, to video portals. They may use also tools and libraries for analytics, or even software libraries like, for example, how the website would look like, fonts, etc. That all come from third parties. So by not knowing, they actually add trackers to these websites, and then they don't audit what's happening. I think I have to connect my laptop to the power. Okay. So this is one of the reasons that we see so many violations of GDPR, right? And unfortunately, there is no audit, right? So governments design their own web page, and then they forget about this, and then this problem can run for years. In the paper, we discuss a few things that can be done to improve what's happening in the governmental website. A critical one is to be more responsible when it comes to the development of the website. So we have seen in many cases that some software, open software or not, is actually used to develop these websites. There is no audit about these tools. There is some contractor develops the website, and then things are stopping there. So we advocate for responsible governmental website development, where specialized programmers can actually develop these critical and sensitive websites. And maybe this is not always given to a contractor, but might be a team in the government that develops this. I have to say some anecdotals here. In our study, we found some cases that it was obvious that some trackers were in the websites. In one case, it was government in Europe, governmental website in Europe about COVID, and they contacted us. So we explained what was the problem, and a few weeks later, they solved the problem, right? So, of course, this is not the best way to solve these issues, right? It's better if you can do it in-house. One other proposal we have is the governmental cloud. So in this case, you don't add videos, links to videos, links to social media, etc., of third parties, but you try to keep all the content within the governmental cloud. So pretty much you reduce the problem of third-party tracking. In some parts of the world, of course, this will not work because there are authoritarian regimes that if all the content is in the cloud, the governmental cloud, then it's again a problem of surveillance. But at least in the Western societies, I think this is a little bit more good solution. We advocate also for audits of the websites of the governments, either within the government, so they have to create auditors that actually go and check the websites of the governments. Also, societies and the citizens should also run tools in order to see where is the problem. And finally, we advocate for education about web tracking. So it's a little bit depressing when I talk about this problem in different audiences that some of them are not aware about the problem, not only about the problem in the governmental websites, but even when you visit the website, what's happening. So I think some of these things have to go in the education, maybe in the primary school or high school, so people are aware of the problems. So they should not give out private information and should be aware of how tracking happens in the web. We are actually, with my group, we try to develop tools to increase awareness and even create the plugins in the browser that actually inform you when you visit the website that this is a potential problem for your privacy. Now, we are going to make all the tools, data available in the GitHub portal we created. And we hope this will increase the bar for privacy in governmental websites first, but then in the web. And with this, I would like to thank you. Thank also the sponsors we have for our research, and I'm happy to get questions. Thank you.